In this episode, I'm going to be giving you all the latest stats when it comes to homes on the lake in the Madison area. Man, what a beautiful day. If you had told me 20 years ago when I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, that I would have such a beautiful place to hang out in, I would have never believed you. So let's dive in, take a look at those numbers, and also some things you might want to know about lake living in Madison, Wisconsin. One of the unique parts about Madison, Wisconsin is that we are located on what is called an isthmus. What is an isthmus? Well, it is a piece of land that is surrounded by, on two sides, by water. So in this case, you'd be Lake Mendota and Lake Monona, and then you have the isthmus that runs right through it. If you go just a little bit further south, you've got Lake Waubesa, and then down to Kegonsa, which is... There's a few things to think about if you're looking at purchasing a home on the lake. And I always like to ask people what their objective is when living on the water. Some people want to feel like they're on vacation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some people just want a second place that they can retreat to over the weekend. Some people are looking to fish. Some people are looking to swim. Some people are looking to simply go water skiing at 5 a.m. to disrupt all those people who are looking at fishing. No matter what it is, you have to figure out where on each of these lakes situates you best to do what you would like to do when buying that lake home. A few examples I like to give people as well is how large and how private would you like your home to be? Would you like there to be over an acre of land? Do you mind if you're butting up right next to your neighbor, but you're closer to city center so you can be in a very walkable neighborhood and bike to downtown? Do you want just a little more space and you don't mind being a 10 to 15 minute drive? Well, then Lake Monona on the Monona side may be the best fit for you. These are important questions to ask yourself because oftentimes what we find is people see that a home's come up on the lake, but they haven't done enough research and they haven't done their homework in order to know exactly where it is they would like to be on the lake. One of the coolest things about being on the lakes here in the Madison area is that you can get from Lake Mendota to Lake Monona and then down to Lake Waubesa all in less than an hour. So you have the Yahara River channel that runs from Lake Mendota through the isthmus over to Lake Monona where I am now. And you go over a series, or under, I should say, a series of bridges to get to the lake. And then if you're going over to Lake Mendota, you actually have to go through the locks to get lifted up into Lake Mendota and then come back over. Just know, if you are doing that, you want to go ahead and buy a pass for the season if you're going to be doing it multiple times. If not, you can pay in cash right there at the lock station. However, it's easier just to get a park pass, in my personal opinion. Here's a pro tip. If you're out on the water on Lake Monona, there's a great place. That's right, Monona's Bait and Ice Cream Shop, located right off of here, Schluter Beach, where you can also make a pit stop if you need to. All right, one of the other crucial things to know about when you're out on the water, because you now live on the water and you want to use your boat, is that there are only two places to get gas. One is here at the Four Lakes Yacht Club on the Yahara River channel in between Monona and Waubesa, and the other would be over at Skipper Bud's. So if you enjoy sailboating more so than you do water skiing, fishing, or any of the powerboat style activities, Monona and Mendota are definitely the places you want to be. Monona has a sailing club that goes out every Wednesday night and has a lot of events. And then you also have the Hoofers, which are on Lake Mendota. You can see in the distance over there the homes that have just recently been built, or some of them are recently built homes on Tony Watha Trail. The one on the left, just to give you perspective, the land alone for that home was $1.5 million. And I just want to point out that not all homes on the Four Lakes in the Madison area will have boathouses, but you are able to build one. A lot of times I get people who ask me about condos on the lakes too, and especially on Lake Monona, there are plenty of buildings. I can count at least 10 to 12 different buildings where you actually have water frontage and you can put a boat in as long as the unit does come with a slip. Right behind me on the easternmost edge of Lake Monona, there are at least 7 buildings alone. And then as you wind your way downtown through the Atwood Shank neighborhood and the Marquette neighborhood, little places. There's one on Morrison that's a small 4 unit. There's one on Spate Street That's Shorecrest East, and that's some older units, most of which have been completely remodeled, some of which are not. In fact, I think there's one there right now that is around $400,000, so it's an incredible deal if you're looking for a condo on the lake. Anyways, then you go over to Lake Mendota. The main complex on Lake Mendota is right over in Shorewood Hills, and that's called The Cove. So if you're looking for a condo with great Lake Mendota views, kind of tucked away near all the walking paths over there, that's called The Cove. And then you have some that are going to be more in the Westport area, and those are going to be on the water. However, they don't have the nice sunset views, sunrise views that you might see in some of these other places. Down on Lake Waubesa, again, they have one or two condo complexes down there, and those are recent in the last 10 years. Lake Kegonsa, not so much. All right, I think it's time we head back to the office and take a look at the numbers for 2024 and year-to-date for 2025, so you can see just how interesting things are year over year on the 4 lakes. All right, back in the office, and I want to break down the numbers for each of the 4 lakes, including Mendota, Monona, Waubesa, and Kegonsa. The one thing to note here, as I've looked over the past 3 years with these sales statistics, what I'm finding is that every single year is different. The reason for that is it depends on the housing stock that comes up on each of these lakes. So sometimes, like I've said before, you get homes that need to be torn down and someone's going to build. Sometimes you get small second home style cabins that come up. Sometimes you get completely remodeled homes. So each of these years, 2023 through 2025, is going to be very different on each of these lakes. And then I'll break down what time of year most of these homes are going under contract and selling, so that you have a better idea if you're looking to purchase when you need to start looking. When looking at Lake Mendota, we see some consistencies when it comes to the sales starting in 2003 and going all the way to year-to-date 2025. The consistencies we see are number of homes sold. So in 2023, 10 homes sold. Year-to-date in 2025, however, 14 have already sold. So you can see that's quite a jump. The other big jump that we see is that in 2023, the average price was $1.1 million. Now it's at $2.8 million. So you can see that's a $1.7 million shift, and that's probably because the housing stock was very different. Now, when it comes to time of year, if you're looking to purchase on Lake Mendota, what we do see a consistent time frame in is that first, second, and third quarters are all equally the same for the most part, and the fourth quarter is where sales drop off. So first, second, and third quarter, more so second and third quarter. So if you're looking April through September is probably going to be the time where most of those homes go under contract if they come onto market at all. The list to sales price this year has actually been 95% of list price, but the average price per square foot for Lake Mendota homes in 2025, $658 per square foot. So again, that has jumped quite a bit, and it's because the housing stock. Lake Monona is one of those where over the last 3 years, sales have been completely erratic. So we have seen anything from the channel homes that you would see on Belle Isle in Monona, all the way to smaller teardowns that might be over on Winona Way on the more southwest side of the lake in the Madison area. Not a lot of home sales that have happened actually in Madison proper, you know, Rutledge, Morrison, those types of streets. What we have seen on Lake Monona is across the board over the last 3 years, sales have ranged anywhere from $975,000 up to $1.1 million. Now, again, as with Lake Mendota, the best time to be looking if you're purchasing a home is going to be the first, second, and third quarters, mainly second and third quarters. It gets to be a little bit competitive in there, but again, we haven't seen the normal sales over the last 3 years, and you would find that homes would be anywhere between, let's say, $450 to $500 per square foot. In 2025, year to date, we have only seen 4 sales, and of those 4 sales, the average price per square foot is $378 per square foot. So if you're doing your research on ChatGPT or just alone off of Redfin, Realtor.com, Zillow, Please know that this changes yearly, and this is an atypical year for Lake Monona home sales. Moving on to Lake Waubesa, and here is from where we see from 2023 to 2025, there have distances as far as price points. So the average sales price has ranged anywhere between 900,000 and 1.1 million. So that has stayed pretty consistent. 2023 and 2024, you saw about the same number of home sales, but then in 2025, year to date, it dips. And I don't know that we're going to see many more home sales, but if we do, so right now, if you look at 2025, only 2 home sales, whereas in 2023, you saw 10 home sales. Again, it's that discrepancy in the market. However, we do see that home sales on Lake Waubesa are at $440 per square foot. The average days on market sits at about 30 in 2025. And I would say that that's also depending on condition of home, location of home. Is it a tear down? Has it been renovated? Or is it a buildable lot? We don't know for sure, but what we do know, second and third quarter, again, you can see that consistently across all the lakes. That's when people are listing. Why are they listing second and third quarter? Because, well, that's when the lakes are at their most beautiful. Probably they've got backyards, landscaping, hardscaping that accentuate the lake. And so second and third quarters are going to be those times when people are looking to list their homes. Don't sleep on Lake Kegonsa, whatever you do. We have seen sales on Lake Kegonsa consistently go up, starting at around $844,000 in 2023 as being the average price, and then climbing up to $1.3 million in 2025. The other thing is we see sales go anywhere from 10 all the way up to 17 in 2024, and year to date there have already been 9 sales on Lake Kegonsa. I'm also noticing that there are a lot more people who are looking at Lake Kegonsa because they feel as though it's the cheaper lake in Madison. And quite simply, what's happening is a lot of people had torn down the original cabins and have built these beautiful homes. I was just in one on Williams Point listed at $2 million. And I have to say they did a stunning job. You also still get the sunsets, the sunrises, and a lot of people like to fish on Lake Kegonsa. So don't sleep on Lake Kegonsa because right now in 2025, the average price per square foot is $440 a square foot. And it is one of the only lakes where we find that the list to sale price ratio is actually 103%. So 3% on average more than the list price is what they're getting on Lake Kegonsa, whereas the other lakes right now were ranging anywhere between 92 to 97% of list price. All right, switching gears, for those of you who are thinking about condo living on one of the lakes near Madison, and I think one of the most exciting things we saw come up this year was actually on Lake Mendota, and that is, did you know that there are private residences above the Edgewater Hotel? So above the Edgewater Hotel, they have just a few private residences, and one of those sold for $5 million. It was 3,400 square feet, obviously enormous views of Lake Mendota, of the university, of downtown. So this is one that has skewed sales prices over on Lake Mendota for condo sales. However, this is what kind of happens every year. So if we're looking at Mendota, there were 5 sales over on Lake Mendota, and that happened on the Cove, over in Westport, and then again at the Edgewater. The average price for condo sales on Lake Mendota in 2025 thus far is $1.3 million. Average days on market is 86. And what we also find is that the list to sale price ratio is 107%. Condo sales on Lake Monona haven't been quite as brisk. We've seen 3 sales. However, there are 2 that are impending. One of those is a client of mine who's purchasing a Fauerbach townhome unit. So those numbers are going to get to be a little bit different. However, we're seeing the average price for condos on Lake Monona at $773,000. Average days on market, a little bit less than Lake Mendota, and that's at 37. And then the list to sale price, again, is above. It's at 101%. So 1% is the average that people are spending above and beyond that list price. So if you're looking to live in a condo on Lake Waubesa and Lake Kegonsa, your options are extremely limited at this point. And so I want to kind of lump these two together. So Lake Waubesa has only seen 2 sales thus far this year in terms of condos. Both of those are at a newer building called Waubesa Shores. So Waubesa Shores is over by the Green Lantern, that side of the lake. And they're beautiful, they're newer, and so they're move-in ready. You also get a pier with those. The average price has been $720,000. Get this, the average days on market for those units, 1. So if you're thinking that you would like to be in a condo at Waubesa Shores, just know that those are selling extremely quickly, and they're selling for about 5% above the list price. So a lot of things to know if you're looking to be at Waubesa Shores come 2026, the end of 2025 and beyond. Lake Kegonsa, oddly enough, went back 3 years. There's only been 1 sale, and that's on Barber Drive. Those are some beautiful townhomes that are right on the lake. However, there's only been 1 sale in the last 3 years. I hope you've enjoyed being out on the water as much as I enjoy it every summer. Maybe you're going to be in a condo or in a single family home, just enjoying all that you can about the beautiful nature that surrounds the isthmus that is Madison, Wisconsin. I appreciate your time. And as always, glad you stopped by.